So yes, Kaya, Nyan Kwel, Ben Curran. Hi, my name is Ben Curran. And I've always been into technology, even like from a little kid. Kind of helped having a dad who was a Sparky, so he'd bring home all kinds of circuits and parts of washing machines and computers when I was a kid. And that kind of became a career for me. Like, I loved working with technology, so I naturally just walked straight into it. Done that for over 25 years now. And I'm now currently working as a cloud solution architect at Microsoft, where I work with customer teams and I'm involved with a lot of community groups to help them build awesome stuff in the cloud. And helping people build awesome stuff is generally a real driver in my life for me. And I think I have an idea of where I got that from. It's because I'm a huge nerd, basically. Through that, most of my hobbies through my life have involved building awesome stuff. If you've ever been to the Dick Smith kits back in the 80s and 90s, they were the best. I spent a lot of my life collecting nerd hobbies, and only a few have stuck with me my entire life. If you've ever been on a Teams call with me, you may have seen one of my hobbies in all of its glory. But there is one other hobby that has kept with me my entire life, and that's video games. They've been part of my life, my outlet, my escape for decades. So no matter where I've been in life, no matter how I felt, there's always been video games. Back when I started playing video games in the 80s, they used to be really brutal, mostly because the main thing they wanted out of you was coins to go into the slot of the arcade machine. But you usually failed because of the most bullshit reasons sometimes. It was really difficult. So this is why I kind of gravitated throughout my life towards more strategy games like these. Because if you reach a failure state, it would be because of something you did within the rule set of the game. And I also love these games because they really made you think all the time. And in some cases, they taught you actual skills and knowledge that you could use. For example, civilization is the reason I passed most of my history exams in high school. It had actual facts in it. So I came to realize when I changed career path about 7, 8 years ago, from being a server janitor to something along the DevOps path, that a lot of these things I was learning while learning DevOps were things that were already familiar to me. Like, I'd done a lot of this stuff before. I realized later that these skills I had actually learned while playing video games. And they gave me a really good, clear understanding of DevOps, because unlike taking courses or book learning, video games can provide you with a uniquely visceral experience, which allows those skills that you learn in game to persist in your brain because of how you've engaged with that system. So to show you where I learned DevOps from, I thought I'd go over a few of my favorite games and the skills that they taught me, which also happen to be skills that are some of the core tenets of DevOps. So let's start with the biggest one in this area, and that is Factorio. So Factorio is a factory simulation game, or as some in the community call it, the spaghetti simulator, as you may be able to tell by the belts on the screen. You are an engineer who has crash landed on a hostile alien world, and you have to survive and collect resources and build infrastructure to construct and launch a rocket in order to be rescued. And the general game loop goes through, you have to mine and collect resources, process those resources into products, and then craft those products into infrastructure, which you then design and build a factory with. And you also design all of the interconnections between those systems to get all the resources through the system. Might sound a bit familiar. Launching a rocket is meant to be where the game ends. However, you can choose to ignore that and just click continue. And that's where the real kind of end game play exists. And it's where you kind of learn all those real DevOps skills from, because at that stage you start going into the territory of ridiculous mega factories where you stop trying to build one rocket and you start trying to build rockets per minute. So see how many you can launch every minute to acquire science to research more things. So how do you do this? Automation is the key to this game. And much like it is in DevOps, and really like most technology roles in our industry these days, I mean, it's like they say, the best IT admin is a lazy IT admin, right? And we've all worked with that person before, where they automate everything they possibly can and then just let that automation do all the heavy lifting for them. You know, you work smarter, not harder, right? That's what we keep being told. But this lets you scale your factory because you can't scale you. You have a limited view, you only have one build pipeline, and everything that you build takes time. Achieving the game goal of launching a rocket, doing everything manually, would actually take the rest of your life. People have calculated it out, and it would take 40, 50 years of in-game time to play this out. And the way Factorio helps with teaching the automation skill is much like you would learn in DevOps. You start small, you target one process, and you understand it by hand first. So in Factorio, you mine, smelt, and craft things yourself. You then move on to automating individual tasks to just remove an amount of work off your plate that you're doing manually. They're usually simple tasks that you can trigger manually to do one thing, but you can do more. So you start moving on to linking them together into more complex tasks. Multi-step functions that, with logic, that have them interact and come together and serve one larger higher purpose, like this one where we're actually building one of the end-game components, green science, based on the output of other factories. And then you keep going with these automation patterns and you move into orchestration, which may look like complete chaos, but trust me, someone built this and it works really well, much like a good complex CI/CD pipeline. There you not only have multiple functions, but you have full circuit-based logic to determine the direction of the family at any given factory at any moment in time, even to the point where you can implement automatic provisioning, observability, and self-healing factories. And you can create event-driven architecture like this. And in order to help you build on automation, Factorio even has a built-in infrastructure as code language, which may look like complete gibberish, but this is actually an encrypted and compressed JSON string that you can then share because the actual JSON string is massive. What's on the screen here is actually a representation of a nuclear reactor module. The idea is to be able to share these with other players just like you would your normal infrastructure as code using a GitHub repo. And lastly, just like the developer world, Factorio even has people arguing over microservices versus monoliths when it comes to scaling their factories out. Just to get an idea, this one here on the left is a microservices version of the monolith right there on the right, all the way over on the right. Both of them launch one rocket per minute. So this does it in a way of sharing all of the resources between each other. That one does it, raw resources in, output up the top. That's it. So let's move on to a game that I really love just because it just really tickles my brain. And I just love how cute these characters are. Kerbal Space Program is a spaceship building and launching simulator that features realistic physics engine where you design and build spacecraft, which you then launch and embark on full end-to-end missions in space around their homeworld of Kerbin. Some of the players of this game include actual rocket scientists and astrophysicists who work for places like NASA, JPL, European Space Agency, and some of them have even consulted with the developers to improve and expand on the game. Things like giving feedback on, once you're out past the ordering, this is not how physics works, it works like this. Okay, only people in that position would know that kind of stuff. And it's a highly challenging game, but has such a great payoff when things go really well. And has a pretty fun payoff when things don't go so well too. And there is a lot that can go wrong when it comes to strapping a couple of Kerbal astronauts to the top of a bunch of fuel tanks and blasting that into space. It turns out it takes a lot to land a spacecraft on another planet. It takes hours of planning, launching, and then orbiting for the right transit window, and then traveling to your destination, hopefully sticking the landing at the other end. But then you have to do all of that to get the Kerbals back. And it can all really come undone when you go to deploy a parachute that you forgot to put on when you were building the thing, or you've accidentally set the sequencing of your landing struts wrong and they pop off as you're trying to land it. It can go sideways really fast, and the next thing you know, you have to build another spacecraft to go recover a stranded Kerbal on the moon instead of having fun exploring the moon. And this is where low-cost tests in the form of minimal viable products come in handy, because it makes it easier and allows you to validate any assumptions you have and catch mistakes early in a safe environment where they're cheaper and easier to fix, rather than trying to do it while orbiting another planet. You can iterate on these MVPs with more features and then more thorough tests with additional systems in place, and they help you understand the risks that you may need to mitigate. Overall, it helps you stay sane in the long run. Lastly, I'm going to talk about Off-World Trading Company, which is a game I really love because of the maker of it is, he was lead designer Soren Johnson, who was a protege of sorts to Sid Meier, who is the creator of the Civilization series. Soren Johnson also created one of the best versions of Civilization, in being Civilization 4. In Off-World Trading Company, you play as a group of corporations seeking to build a profitable industry around the first colonies of Mars. And that involves obtaining resources, processing them into goods, and selling them both on a local market, which is influenced by other players buying and selling the same goods, or by selling them off-world, which requires a lot of risk and a high investment, but has really high reward. And your end goal is to eventually outmaneuver and buy out your competition. But not everything will go to plan all the time. Sure, you might get a bit lucky and walk an easy path for a while, but luck runs out. Off-World Trading Company teaches you to be able to adapt to the situation, and that is vital to survival, especially with how fast things can turn around out on you with a constantly shifting central market and other things that you may not have control over, like a black market. You need to stay aware of these conditions and that they may change very rapidly. And make sure you have plans to be able to pivot quickly and, if needed, and mitigate potential disasters. The need for resilience in this translates into the real world. I mean, we'll all face things throughout our careers. Look around. We're in the middle of a huge downturn at the moment, where people in our industry are struggling. And even outside of that, things in development, projects, or especially operations, aren't always going to be a smooth road. But a good resilient product, team, or company will be able to adjust and pivot according to the situation. And sometimes may even thrive in the face of adversity. You'll always get knocked down, but it's how well you are at getting back up and adapting that counts. So, what have we learned at the end of the day? There are a lot more lessons that can be learned from these games, but what you see here already is that they can be very useful tools for teaching skills. And although their mechanics are tightly coupled with their gameplay loop, the skills they're teaching through repeatable and safe application through emergent gameplay help reinforce those lessons and turn them into skills. After all, it was one of the most important characteristics in our industry to have a drive to learn, a drive to expand our skill sets, and through them, learn about new technology, but also have some fun on the journey of building really cool stuff, wherever and however you want to build it, be it at work, on your own passion projects, or maybe on a hostile alien world. Thank you very much.